Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Toffee Blues podcast. You are listening to the first one in what's been quite a while, and there's been a lot of happenings at Everton Football Club. The last time we spoke, Frank Lampard was still the manager, and obviously since then, quite swiftly, Sean Dyche came in and took the reins. Delighted to say I'm joined by Mike Richards from the Unholy Trinity podcast to discuss all the latest topics at the moment with the club. So yeah, Mike, we'll just jump straight into it, mate, because there's a bit of ground to cover. Lampard gone. Right decision, wasn't it, mate? He couldn't have stayed in that position any longer. It got untenable towards the end, didn't it?
Results are always going to dictate, aren't they? We were always advocates of giving the manager time and building and having stability. As time went on, it's when I think it was one win in 14 games, didn't win since no win since the 22nd of October, I think it was, against Crystal Palace. There wasn't much in that time that you'd probably look at and say, there was a bright spot. Bar probably City away, it wasn't great, and unfortunately, for Frank, it was probably time to go. People would argue he should have gone earlier. People would argue he should have gone post Bournemouth, post Wolves. There was quite a few games there where really, unfeasibly, he could have gone. But yes, he had to go, unfortunately. And it's a shame. A lot of us wanted it to work for him. He was a personable manager. There was a link there with us fans, obviously, with what happened last year. But unfortunately, that's football, and results will always dictate.
Absolutely, yes. So obviously, quite a quick turnaround. Talking Marcelo Bielsa coming in, that didn't happen. I don't think that was quite the right move at that time. But Sean Dyche is the man. Sean Dyche just came in now. For you, was that the right decision, or would you have liked to see them go in a different direction? Because in my opinion, I think this was the most pragmatic and sensible move in the position that we were in.
I think you summed it up correctly there. It was sensible. It was the right move for the right man at the right time. If you're looking to build a philosophy and a foundation and a structure, he's probably not your man in terms of where they want to go. Let's be brutally honest, and that's not me sitting here trying to be derogatory towards him. He says it himself. He's very, very sort of Marmite as a manager, as a man. It was probably a 50-50 split in terms of people wanting Sean Dyche or Bielsa, but he was certainly sensible to appoint him at this point of the season, given his experience with Burnley. He's been in similar situations before with them. He's operated with a shoestring budget for a lot of those years as well, and obviously coming to us at that time, there wasn't a great deal of money to spend, especially prior to Anthony Gordon leaving the club. There should have then been some money for him to spend before the window closed, but that's another matter. But it made sense. I think most Evertonians can understand why he's been appointed, and the hope is obviously that he can bring enough experience, expertise, and knowledge to the club to get us through to the end of the season. And obviously, make sure we stay in the Premier League.
You mentioned that Sean Dyche has worked on a shoestring budget many a time before in his managerial career at Burnley. Obviously, he came in. We sold Anthony Gordon. And we went into that transfer deadline day, or the last 48 hours or so, and obviously we'd still not signed any players. We sold Anthony Gordon to Newcastle for about 45 million pounds, and we all know the disappointments of not being able to bring anyone in, especially in those forward positions. And it's very easy to sit here and I'm not trying to sound too negative, but it's always easy to do a recording or a video on the back of a win and sounding upbeat. But we've got to remain realistic here. It was very disappointing that they weren't able to get anyone through the door, Mike, wasn't it? We all know that the Danjuma thing. Okay, that's just one of them. Unfortunately, it looked like that was all but done before Danjuma had us off essentially. So, but what was your sort of take on the whole final days of the transfer window? Did you think we'd maybe at least get one person in?
100%. I mean, it was unforgivable, really. If looking at the situation that we find ourselves in, we've come out of the window in a worse position and with a bigger squad. Let's understand that. There's no way for me that Sean Dyche wasn't told he could get at least one, if not two players through the door before the window closed. He knew he would have needed some bodies, especially in attacking areas. We've needed bodies in attacking areas since the season started. We brought in, obviously, like McNeil, Neil Mopey. But in terms of obviously getting someone who's similar to Dominic Calvert-Lewin, that should have happened in the summer. You know, it just doesn't make any kind of sense to me why that kind of profile of striker was not brought in ahead of a Neil Maupay. Now, I know Maupay was nowhere near the top of the list. Neither was Dwight McNeil. But, you know, to come out of this transfer window without a striker is unforgivable. And that is why the situation between fans and board, you know, that's another string to our bow, so to speak, in terms of why we're unhappy with the current situation, because they can't look at that situation and say that we should have come out of the window in this current manner. And we can, you know, I know Sean Dyche's probably been briefed, and you know, he said he worked hard. I'm sure he did, but it was a very scattergun approach, wasn't it? If you look at the names that were linked on that deadline day, I counted 17 or 18 different players, which is just, you know, from defenders right through to centre forwards. It was just, you know, I think I even saw one put a goalkeeper from somewhere. It was just absolutely, you know, an incredible day. And then you sort of get halfway through the afternoon and you think, this is going nowhere, going absolutely nowhere. You know, a couple of them, you know, the main targets that we were linked to going elsewhere and choosing the Premier League side. And you just thought, you know what, we're going to come out of this with no players. And you know, the fan unrest, certainly for me, it shouldn't go away. It should be separated. I've said it since on our podcast. It's got to be separate from, you know, from those 90 minutes during the game. Of course, it has, and it was great against Arsenal. You know, fantastic. But we can't forget it, because we won a game of football. It doesn't mean all our troubles are going to go away, because one, we're nowhere near guaranteed survival in the Premier League. That's the first pressing situation, and two, nothing's changed in terms of behind the scenes, in terms of the board, who makes up the board. We hear about potential investments coming through. That was the last sort of 24 hours or so. Yet again, if it comes off, then, you know, fantastic, because it means that they have to get a couple of people on the board. But, you know, things have got to change, and we can't forget what we're currently fighting for as well off the pitch.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, before we delve into the game itself, just that Arsenal game, obviously coming away with 3 points, it's fantastic, it's brilliant and all this, and the first win in so long. But I think you're spot on in when you say, you know, the pressure just can't be sort of relieved a little bit. You know, we've still got to maintain that for too long now. We've been served up to us by this club, and that can easily be forgotten. You know, don't sound too negative, but you know, that's where we are. That's the way it is. And you know, the thing that worries me is that people are. We beat Arsenal, and albeit we deserve to beat Arsenal. It was probably our best performance of the season, in my opinion. But I'm seeing people not get too getting a bit carried away and stuff, and saying like, oh, this is it now. This is, you know, Dyche's blues and all this. And I appreciate that it's great and all this. We beat the league leaders, and it's our first win in a while. But we need to really stay grounded. I think. It was a fantastic result, of course it was, and it's a perfect start in many ways. But it's important that we take things a game at a time, Mike, isn't it? Because I think it's always easy to come and discuss Everton on the back of a win. Of course it is, but we can't forget where we are. It's still unforgivable as it is right now, but it is all about just taking it a game at a time and not being too carried away. What do you reckon?
The saying that came up on our show at the weekend after the Arsenal game was, one swallow doesn't make a summer. And it's that's very apt. Like, it's one game. It is one game. And it was, as you say, it was brilliant to see Goodison Park the way that it was. The atmosphere was tremendous. The performance was very, very good. There was definitely a structure. There was a plan. The players have bought into it. Obviously, a combination of fresh ideas and new mind your bounce probably combined is what's got us through. You know, the running stats speak for themselves. You know, to have a player like Decore come in out of the cold, he was ostracised, obviously, under the previous manager, for whatever reason that was. Come in and lead the running stats in the way that he did, it was exceptional. Loads and loads of positives. Don't, you know, let's not misunderstand what we're trying to say here. It was great, and as fans, we deserve that.
Yeah,
we've had such a poor time of things over the last, you know, 3 months or so. We deserved to bask in that victory, enjoy it. Watch the highlights, watch the goals, watch the tunnel access, all those things. You know, of course you do, because you want to enjoy the win. But we've got to keep ourselves grounded and remember, it gets no easier. We go to the dreaded Anfield on Monday. We've got sides in and around us coming up as well. But, you know, really, really important. What it's given us is hope, and that's the key thing. That's all. That's the takeaway from me, is that we're all saying, sort of, when Lampard went and we were looking for a manager, whoever they bring in, I just can't see us getting out of this relegation scrap. What it's done is people think, you know what, you can see what he's done in sort of 5 or 6 days, a manager. If you can do that in 5 or 6 days, what can you do in 5 months? And it's a valid point, but it's just given us a little bit of hope that, you know what, we can get ourselves out of this. The players have shown that they are up for the fight. The question is always, why weren't they under the previous manager? But obviously things go on and things happen. But yeah, hope is the key word really.
Yeah, absolutely. I completely agree with what you've just said. I think back to that West Ham game, which was obviously turned out to be Lampard's final time in the dugout, and there was such a feeling of resignation. Everyone was despondent. There was at that time there was no other outcome than relegation. It felt like, but coming out of Goodison Park on Saturday, it was such a there was a feeling of, we can do this, and these players are capable, and they can do it, and they can work hard. And like you said, that they look like they were up for a fight. And if that's the direction we're heading under Sean Dyche, then absolutely we've got every chance of surviving. We've got every chance of getting out of this mess. I just want to touch on a couple of players now. You mentioned one there. I think Abdoulaye Doucouré is one who I think a lot of people probably surprised that he's still here. Actually, he was quite tipped to leave in the January transfer window. Potential suitors in Fulham, Nottingham Forest, potentially going into Europe, and straight away out the cold into the starting 11. And that was the best Abdoulaye Doucouré performance I've seen for a while, since probably under the Ancelotti era, to be honest. It was very much like when we first got him in during that COVID season. So how impressed were you with Doucouré's performance? As you say, coming out from the cold, it was just a bit unexpected and a really welcome return in many ways, wasn't it?
Like you say, when we were close to the ground, I think we got out of the car. We were just walking down Everton Valley, and the team news came up, and no one was more surprised than me to see him in the starting 11. Especially like we said earlier on, the fact that he was frozen out. He was told to go and train on his own. It appeared he had a fallout with Frank Lampard, and as a cigar he was involved, and that there was a few things going on, but massively surprised. I was thinking about, we were all thinking it's going to be a 4-4-2. We were all thinking 4-4-2. Where Mopé might get the nod with Dom. Maybe he played great off Dom as just behind him. Obviously, it came out that the migraine hadn't changed the week of the game. So to see him come in, obviously you're starting with a really athletic Amadou Onana, who obviously was exceptional on the day. I thought it was just a guy against best performance since he's come back to the club as well.
Yeah.
He's in a midfield there with experience with just a guy again, but also loads of talent in Amadou Onana, and I think it complemented him, the fact that Ghana just sat. I mean, if you look at his average position during the game, it was actually on line with James Tarkowski, so that shows how deep he was sitting, and that was allowing the two of the lads, Onana and Doucouré, to go hunting. So when they were meant to, and it wasn't just pressing for pressing's sake, they pressed at the right time, and they were both going, and it suits his game. You don't want to be giving him much defensive responsibility. Garner and Onana more so can take care of that. Onana's great in the tackle. We saw that on the edge of his own box, where slide tackle, ball gets him back to him. He does a little Fellaini pirouette, and he's away. And he's got that in his locker. The core, just let him be free in that midfield. And he's shown Amadou what he's all about. And for him, it was probably refreshing that obviously he was going through a difficult time with the previous manager. So for a new man to come in and get told, listen, you've got a clean slate, we're all starting again, it's the reset button. I think, what, I can show you what I can do. And fair play to him. If you look at that side that started the game against Arsenal, assuming that Dom is fit and they'll get through this week, that should be the side that starts against Liverpool on Monday as well.
Yeah, I completely agree. So just going forward now, obviously we've seen the turnaround in the space of a few days that Sean Dyche has been there. You talk about individual performances. It's just Gana Gay seems that he was back to his best. Abdoulaye Doucouré back to his best. Amadou Onana as well, who was just absolutely fantastic in that game. So going forward, do you think Sean Dyche can really start tapping into some of these players and playing to their potential? Because like you say, you look at players like a Doucouré, a Gana Gay, Onana. These are players who really work hard, and probably players who a manager like Sean Dyche can really get the most out of, where perhaps a Frank Lampard, with all due respect, maybe couldn't. So do you think maybe that's something else that we can look forward to under Dyche?
I think his experience speaks for itself, really, and that's what will probably separate him from Frank Lampard in a way. like I say, he's been there, he's done that. We've already heard stories about him telling Amadou Onana or linking Onana up with Stefan Defoe, who we had at Burnley, you know, quality footballer. You know, he came to Burnley a bit late, I suppose, in his career, but on his day, you know, really, really talented footballer. And the idea with that is to teach him to do the dirty side of the game as well. You know, he knows how talented Onana is, but says, listen, you need to learn the other side of the game. And, you know, I think little things like that, the players should be receptive to. They certainly don't know it all. And these younger lads, you know, Onana, you know, he's 21 years of age. Let's understand it. He hasn't played much football. He has not played much football in his career. He didn't play much at Lille at all. And people think, obviously, you know, we come in, hefty price tag for a kid of his age, but he's going to hit the ground running. And it's taken him until around about probably Man City, Man United away in the Cup, when we really started to see him perform, because we were seeing him in bits, weren't we, little snippets.
Yeah, some
and he
flashes.
thought, you know, but I think sort of at the back end of Lampard's tenure, besides obviously the West Ham game, really, you start to see Amadou Onana come to the fore and come into his own. And it was always going to take time because of the age of him coming into the most difficult league in the world. But, you know, I said it the other day, I still think that this squad on paper is better than our squad last season. The big loss is Richarlison, of course, but other, you know, attacking wise, we're probably worse off. But other parts of the pitch were better. We're better than we were last season. So there's no reason why this squad can't kick on and can't go on a bit of a run and we can't pull ourselves clear. It was just that you need to have the belief that they can do it. And Saturday against Arsenal hopefully gives them some kind of belief that, you know what, when we do set up in this way, we all know our jobs, we all know our roles. And we beat the best side in the country. That's what Arsenal are. Arsenal have been beaten once all season, which was September against Manchester United. You know, they've played other sides, other top sides. The other side who stopped them scoring was Newcastle so far this season. And they're obviously in fantastic form. So it shows you how good a performance that was. So they should take great confidence from beating the side, which for me is still going to win the Premier League this season anyway.
Absolutely, you know, that's it, and it's all about the confidence that we can take from it. You know, I'm going into the game against Arsenal, you know, people saying, "Oh, what do you reckon? What do you reckon?" A lot of talk about new manager bounce and all this, but my answer was sort of, "Oh, anyone but Arsenal," because they were just that good at the time. You know, they were just, and they still are good, of course they are, but they're just in that rich of a vein of form, and they're just blowing teams away week after week. I just wanted to play anyone but them. I mean, I probably would have think we had the chance, but like you said, to go away and beat them. I don't want to say comfortably, but you know, we never looked that shaky or ropey at any point in the game, which is really, really good to see. And going back to what I said before, it's all about confidence going forward. Obviously, we've got a massive game on Monday night, which we'll come on to in a second. But just before we move on, obviously, we mentioned Amadou Onana there, really starting to come into his own now. There was a lot of, not a lot of talk, but there was a couple of whisperings that maybe some of the bigger sides were in for him. And this isn't going to go away, by the way. The better he gets, the louder this noise is going to get. And hopefully his price tag does as well for our sake. But he's staying. We all saw that he put, you know, on social media, he's been quite vocal in his, you know, that he's up for the fight. He wants to stay. Listen, whether he's here next season, that'll take care of itself. I'll worry about that at the time. But right now, he's an integral part of this Everton side. But it feels very much like since Richarlison left, Evertonians, we've always wanted someone to really look to and you know, connect with and all that. There's always seems to be that one player in an Everton side that we've been able to really connect with, and maybe a bit of that was lost in the earlier parts of the season, and you know, with Richarlison leaving. So Amadou Onana, he's a fan's favourite now. You know, there's no doubt about that. I think with the way, with a lot said about footballers, you know, with the whole Danjuma thing, you know, the way Anthony Gordon left the club. But for Onana to come out and say, no, I'm staying, I'm an Everton player and I want to fight for the badge, it's everything that an Evertonian wants to hear, and it's only going to do him the world of good for the fans between now and the end of the season, isn't it?
Yeah, you know, listen, he's played himself into that fan favourite mode almost, and players, and fans look at him, and you know, bear in mind, it was only a few weeks back when he was trying to G the crowd up. People give him a little bit of stick, but
Yeah,
that's him.
course.
You know, he likes to express himself. He likes to get the fans on side. He's eager to please, of course he is. You know, but he's a character. He comes across as really clever, really bright. You know, speaks numerous languages. He's a very good footballer, of course. But you know, this kid that speaks very, very well, has bought into the club and what the fans are all about. he probably understands. Listen, we're looking for somebody, like you say, like the Richarlison in that kind of role. Because you look at that side, and I always think about what I grew up and the sides that I grew up with, even sort of through the 90s, and obviously David Moyes and things like that. And there was loads of players, wasn't it? You'd say, you go to the park and you'd scream their name. You know what I mean? You'd want to emulate certain players.
Absolutely.
And you look at the squad now, and you think, well, if I was a kid now, who would I look up to? When Anthony Gordon had a bit of a following from the kids, obviously since gone. But you look at the other players, and with all due respect, when we talk about characters, there isn't really anyone that stands out. But then Onana, as obviously the season's going on, and as I say, performances from him have been improving. He's the one now that I think a lot of kids will look to emulate, and he's the one. He'd be the shirt seller. But like you say, the end of the season, who knows? Because these links in the summer, in the January transfer window, they didn't come from nowhere. There was definitely interest there from Chelsea, from Arsenal, and this kid, is the world's his oyster, because he can go on and do great things. And unfortunately for us, the chances are that will be away from us. Whether he's here for next season, all depends what happens with us, of course. But I think regardless of our situation in the summer, there's going to be some big offers coming for him. There really is, in my opinion. I think there's going to be a lot of interest in him. And Everton, will quite easily probably double the money on him if they sold him in the summer. If he obviously his form stays as it currently is, or lives and buts. But yeah, he's got bags of talent. The attributes are, the prime for the modern game. Everyone wants a midfielder. Like a Yaya Toure type. That's what he reminds me of. He's carrying the ball, big long legs. Bring goals into his game, of course. Loads of time to develop, but that kind of character. Look at Vieira in terms of, again, a bit different to Yaya Toure. Those kind of attributes, the big long legs, can carry the ball, loves a tackle. That's what he reminds me of. He's got it all, the kid, and it's just a shame, unfortunately. I think that we won't see his best years, but he'll do big things.
This is it, isn't it? Amadou Onana, he's the talk in January. It's a sign of things to come, and the better he gets, teams are going to come in for him. The big boys are going to come in for him. Let's have it right. And you know what? Everton probably are going to make the money on him. But having said that, how many times have we sat here in the past and had conversations about looking at teams like Brighton and Leicester in years gone by who have pinched young talents from Europe and then doubled the money on them. So in that sense, you almost you don't really have too much of an issue with it, because if he comes, does a job for Everton, makes a name for himself, Everton double the money, then this is the sort of, you've got to give credit where credit's due. This is the sort of strategy and way of doing things that we've been crying out for years now. So, like I said, we'll worry about the summer when the summer comes, because there's an awful lot of work to do between now and then. But Amadou Onana, as of right now, he seems to really, really start to pick up in his Everton career. Just before we start to finish, obviously, there's the small matter of the Merseyside Derby on Monday night. Not a very happy hunting ground for the Blues, as we all know. We all know their situation right now. This is what kind of worries me, that there's a lot of spotlight on them at the minute about how they are underperforming. And that worries me in a way, because it's almost like if the shoe was on the other foot in a sort of way, a big game was coming up under the lights at Goodison, you'd expect it, if it was our club, to really start to turn up for a big game with this magnitude. So what are your thoughts heading into the Derby Monday night? Because they're obviously, we all know that they're not as good as they have been in the past. Still full of quality players. Let's have it right. We know that it's full of players that can really hurt us, but we can take a lot of confidence from beating the best team in the land. And we've just got to go and just put in a hard working performance and see if we can come out the other end.
All we can do is concern ourselves with what we do. What Liverpool do is what Liverpool do, and on any given day, if Liverpool turn it on, then they beat any side in the Premier League. Whether they're in form, not in form, they've got the players who can hurt you. And if you look at the players that obviously in attacking positions, Salah is still a quality footballer. Gakpo has been brought in for big money, hasn't scored yet. What's going to happen on Monday night.
Yeah.
And Nunes, he's missing the most big chances from any player throughout the whole season. But again, he's a talented kid, and at some point it'll click for him. That's, Liverpool don't tend, to be honest with you, they tend to do okay in the transfer market, and they don't spend big money on players and it not really work out. So there's been a few over the years, but not many, I'd say, sort of recently, and Nunes will do all right for them, I think. But we've got to see hope in there from the fact that we beat Arsenal, and the fact that we show that we can compete with the best sides in the league. And Liverpool are struggling, of course they are, and when they're struggling because Klopp loses his head in press conferences, and he started to do that already. When he went on to certain questions from James Pearce, for example. So with the pressure's getting to him. Liverpool are massively underperforming. I'm sure their owners and board would want them to be certainly within the Champions League places at this moment in time, and they're nowhere near. Let's get the mid-table, and we shouldn't be going there with any kind of fear. I think if we hadn't beaten Arsenal or hadn't put in that kind of shift, maybe if Frank was still with us, I don't think we'd be going to Anfield feeling as optimistic as we currently are. But like we said, maybe we need to just temper our expectations a little bit and remember the fact that Liverpool are a quality side, and they can if they want to turn it on, they can turn it on. If it clicks, and it's Monday night under the lights at Anfield. I'm sure it'll be a raucous atmosphere. But Everton, as I say, they've shown what they can do a few days ago, and that's fresh in our minds as fans now. And we shouldn't be going there with any kind of fear. Certainly not. We can hurt them massively. At the back, that's the weakest part of the team. The defense is poor. Let's get it right. I know you've got decent fullbacks, but Alexander-Arnold doesn't defend particularly well. Obviously Van Dijk, I don't think he's going to make the game. Matip looks horrendous. Gomez played the other day against Wolves. They're lacking a lot there at the back. Is Kunate and Van Dijk are the two that they would want there, and neither should be playing on Monday. So we've got to take a lot of confidence in there. But is Dom going to be fit? Potentially. If he's not, it's a struggle because when we're going long, when Dom went off, the quality dropped a little bit. Onana was sort of dropping into time when the headers. Mopey did okay, but obviously he's only short, isn't he? So difficult when you want to go long. And Sean Dyche will be wanting Jordan Pickford to be sending those balls long as well. So all depends obviously how Dom comes through this week. Although there's no injury there really, no severe injury. It's how we get through this week's training. But confidence has got to be there, and we've got to believe. We've got to believe that we can get something from the game, whether it's a point, whether it's 3 points. We've got to believe that we can do it, because if the players don't, then we get turned over. But Sean Dyche, I'm sure, from what I've seen in the first 10 days or so in his tenure, and what I saw at Goodison Park at the weekend, I've got full belief that those players will be ready for the battle on Monday.
That's what it's all about, and it's about being ready for the battle. And I completely agree. Sean Dyche, you have an awful lot more confidence than if it was Frank Lampard in the dugout. But even if we go there and we come away with a point, if you look at Arsenal and Liverpool and you come away with 4 points out of them games, you would have snapped someone's hand off for that going into those games, wouldn't you? And then on the other side of that, post Monday night, we're then back at Goodison for a couple of back-to-back games. Well, I don't think it's back-to-back now because the Arsenal game's been rearranged at the Emirates. But you know what I'm trying to say. You start looking again where you can start building on that and picking up even more points then. So, but yeah, it's going to be a really difficult one. It always is going to Anfield. It's the derby. No one likes the derby. Form goes out the window and all that. But at the end of the day, it's a game of football for 90 minutes, and against a side who are obviously full of quality, not really at the races at the moment, but you could argue neither are we in Arsenal game aside. But what'll be. The derby will take care of itself. I'm sure it will. I'd be more than happy with a classic Merseyside Derby 0-0. But we'll see on that one. But like I said, if we come away with a point, then that's 4 points against Arsenal, Liverpool, and that's fantastic given how dire things looked a couple of weeks ago. But if we can somehow come away with the win, then I'm sure we'll all just be in dreamland, and then we'll be plotting some kind of charge for the Champions League then. But apart from that, we'll leave it there. So yeah, big thanks to Mike for jumping on the podcast. This podcast is available wherever you get your normal podcasts from. This will also be available to watch back on YouTube as well. And also be sure to check out the Unholy Trinity podcast for some great content as well. But yeah, we'll just leave it there. So thanks very much for listening, and we'll speak to you next time on the Toffee Blues podcasts. Cheers. See you later.